Today I'll be talking about the situation in Hobart that happened last year with high pollution levels and the closure of one of those beaches, what happened last season around the estuary, some of the sources of that pollution and what we know, the results of the monitoring and how that affected the long-term water quality ratings at beaches and bays, and the challenges that we faced along the way, both through the Derwent Estuary Program but also some of our partners. And where we go to from here. But before I launch into the beaches side of things, I'd like to take a bit of a step back and talk about, well, where on earth in the world am I talking about, and why the Duan Estuary Program, who we are, and why we're involved with the beach program in the first place. So looking at a really big picture, this is Tassie. The Derwent River starts in the heart of Tasmania in the World Heritage Area. It comes out of Lake St Clair and flows right across Tasmania into the Derwent Estuary, which is the little red spot at the bottom here. We define the Derwent Estuary as from starting round about New Norfolk and going right through to the Iron Pot Light. It's red for a reason. It's got a number of environmental challenges. It has the dubious honour of having some of the most contaminated sediments in the world with heavy metals. Nutrient pollution is something that affects all cities. Hobart's not alone in that. We have lost a lot of our habitats and species, and beach water quality is really important for our local community. So the Duan Estuary Program has been around for about 20 years now, and we're a partnership in the true sense of the word. We're now a not-for-profit as well, and we work closely with industry, state and local governments and the community. And our organisation is not a statutory one, but our purpose is to enable informed decisions to restore and to promote the Derwent. So we have a whole-of-system focus, water quality in particular, but also habitats and our foreshore. So these are the people that we work with, 6 local councils. We have 29 councils in Tasmania. We have 6 of them in Hobart, 5 industry partners and the state government. And we also work quite closely with others on particular projects through universities and Australian state government, and South and community groups as well. So now onto the beach story. We coordinate with the 6 local councils, the Beach Watch program, and provide that information to the Department of Health. And we monitor it on a weekly basis with the EPA from the 1st of December through to the end of March. And we make that information publicly available. We measure enterococci, which is a faecal indicator of warm-blooded animals. And the last season in particular created a lot of public interest, and it turns out for good reason. We had a lot of exceedances of the state guidelines in terms of the enterococci levels at beaches and double that of last season. So what does that actually mean? What's going on out there? That's a very good question and something that a lot of people are trying to work out, particularly down at Kingborough, where Blackman's Bay Beach has been closed for swimming and has caused a lot of community outrage. And so the sources of pollution, well, they're multiple, and it's quite confusing to try and work out particular sources. And these are some of the sorts of things that we do find when we investigate further. Human waste, dogs, birds, enterococci can actually live in the sediments as well. Comes from farm animals, wildlife, and other factors, passing boats, discharging, for example. When it comes to most of the pollutants come through the stormwater system, so that's probably the most obvious place to look when you're trying to identify where the pollution is coming from. It's a really difficult and time-consuming process to try and work out where the sources of pollution are coming from and what they might be. Essentially, it's starting at the bottom and going through and almost working through pipe by pipe, popping up lids, using dye tests or smoke tests. Some DNA testing was done as well, but the challenges with things like those tests, there's not one magic test that will say, okay, this is the source of pollution. Often the results are inconclusive, and we're back to square one and we find out that it's multiple sources. However, fixing damaged infrastructure is a pretty obvious place to start. So that comes to our next slide, is a question I'm often asked. It doesn't matter who you are in the community, is it safe to swim in the Derwent? And you think with the last season and the hoo-ha around Blackman's Bay that you wouldn't want to go swimming anywhere in the Derwent, but as it turns out, 17 of the 18 beaches that we monitor are actually okay for swimming. But when it is polluted, we do take the precautionary principle and advise people not to swim if the enterococci levels are too high. It could cause gastrointestinal illnesses, respiratory problems, or ear, eye, nose and throat infections, which is why the Department of Health provide these advisories. So the last season's results showed us that there was some good news and some bad news. As I mentioned, 17 of the 18 beaches are okay for swimming, and we had one good result where one of the beaches in Sandy Bay, which has been a poor rating for 15 years, has come down, so the entire beach is actually okay for swimming again. There are no new poor rated beaches, which is a big relief for a lot of the councils and also Taswater. And some of the best water quality you can find in Hobart is actually off Waterman's Dock, which is, I guess, shows that where we do invest in improving our infrastructure, we do get great results from our monitoring and showing the water quality has improved. But the bad news is that there's things going on in the estuary that we need to look at. So a number of beaches moved from good to fair. The middle of Blackman's Bay, Howrah across the estuary, and Nutgrove East. And the environmental sites have also increased quite significantly. So if you're wondering where on earth we monitor, this is a map you can find on our website for more detail, and it highlights the long-term ratings of your local beach. So you're welcome to go and have a look at that to try and find out, where you'd like to go and swim. And this is a bit of a comparison now of I know it's a bit of a slide, a busy slide showing last season versus this season in terms of how water quality has changed and looking at our long-term gradings. And this is based on 5 years' worth of rolling data. There's a lot of confusion in the community about the weekly result versus the long-term grade. I think there's interesting sort of communicating about that. There's challenges in people worrying about that weekly result and what that means. We go back and retest and then it's okay. But I think looking at the long-term grading as well is actually really important. For example, a good rated beach gives you the confidence that 95% of those results are below the trigger levels, saying that most of the time, 95% of the time, is good water quality. So the long-term grading is actually quite important to look at. The environmental sites tell not so much a nice story. Some of the worst sites we have in the Derwent include Murrayville Esplanade, the end of Hobart Rivulet, the Cornelian Bay, and I've mentioned Murrayville Esplanade as well, and Browns River. But they're important I think, for us to have a look at in more detail when it comes to managing our water quality. So, it's all made from a very exciting season, and suddenly stormwater has become a priority again, which is, from my point of view, a really good opportunity because the poor result in Blackman's Bay, it really galvanised the community down there to complain about it. They don't like to lose a really beautiful asset and say you can't swim there, and what does that say about the rest of the environment? And I think that pressure, particularly it came through the councils, also to the EPA, at ministerial level, Taswater, and also the Derwent Estuary Program, and suddenly stormwater becomes a high priority for everybody. So trying to maximise that momentum is something that the Duan S3 program wants to do. Also made more exciting because I think every week there was a newspaper article about how dirty the beaches were. Even though 17 out of 18 beaches are okay, the media like to focus on perhaps not the fact that, where are the dirtiest beaches, DNA tests, and that presented quite a lot of challenges for the organisations trying to manage the situation, and how we also managed our messages and talked to people about what was actually happening and what we're trying to do. So this proved quite testing times for the Duan Estuary Program, and Taswater and the council in particular, particularly down at Blackman's Bay, which was the focus for the season. So I guess the key for us was it's really about a collaborative focus and a key consistency in our messages, being honest about the problem, not trying to hide behind it, saying you don't know when you don't know, but also having action to follow up what it is that you're talking about. So we provide the monitoring and the information to the managers, which is councils and Taswater, and they took that on and their own monitoring as well, and then start doing something about it, which is actually really critical for the community to have, so they have confidence that something's actually being done. And having that united front in the media was also really important. That's not to say that things are over yet, but I think at the end of this last season, I think we can be all quite proud of what we did and have achieved and what we're aiming to do going forward as well because of that consistency and internal communications. So at the end of the season, this is a lovely happy snap of the Lord Mayor and the Mayor of Kingborough and Taswater and myself celebrating the win at Nutgrove. Nutgrove Beach had a poor rating for 15 years. It was interesting though, the difference between Nutgrove Beach and Blackman's Bay, which has caused absolute outrage, for the first year it being a poor rated beach. This end of Nutgrove has been poor for 15 years and no one cared. So it's really quite interesting, the shift in thinking, which is why I'm quite keen to maximise this momentum. Fixing Nutgrove took a long time. It took 2 years of trying to find the problem, cracks in pipes, really hard to find, the problem's intermittent. There's more than one, sometimes there are illegal connections of sewer. They found that down at Blackman's Bay as well. And this morning's presentation made me think, oh gosh, with climate change and the challenges with infrastructure cracking, increased amounts of pathogens, this may be something we will spend a lot of time doing in the future. So this took 2 years to fix, but it also shows that when you do put the effort in and the monitoring is showing that this is working and the beach is now open. So for us, it's not, now that the season's over, the pressure's off from the media point of view because it's cold and no one's swimming, but the season won't be too far away before we start again, and I can't see the problem or the interest disappearing. I've had an email today from a member of the community concerned about the seagulls down at Blackman's Bay, and that's an ongoing concern as well. So this is here to stay for a little while. So what we're going to do with our partners is certainly we've reviewed the season and looking at where we can do things better in terms of our communications with each other, and what happens if we get a really high result and who we contact and when. Working with our stormwater task force, that's the other advantage of the Derwent Estuary Program, is that we can bring together a lot of people to bring collective heads together to work on a problem, and we'll do that through the stormwater task force. How can we better manage stormwater quality from a catchment sense, and continue the communication with the Duan S3 program, but also the public, and making it as clear and concise and open as we possibly can. Where we need to, seeking funding, because infrastructure projects can be expensive, and really looking at the last season's long-term results, those fair rated beaches, they're a warning sign. It's time we really need to focus on those now, so we don't see too many more beaches in the red, because I think the community are saying we don't want to accept that. If you're interested in knowing where to find our information, we have a website and we publish our results beginning of December weekly here. Also put them on Facebook. I encourage you to share that information, so the more people who know about where to find this information is a good thing. And there are also things as individuals we can all do, and something we'd like to share with community more broadly. It's really quite simple to assist not just the Derwent Estuary Program, but also the people at Taswater and councils trying to do things. Is use a qualified plumber if you're going to do an extension. We found some illegal connections. Sometimes they can happen in a new subdivision, so there's quality assurance issues there with development. Picking up after our dogs, there's a lot of bird problems down at the beaches. I don't think it's to do with feeding the birds, but that's another story. Report leaking pipes. Be the eyes and ears for the Derwent, and get involved, have some fun with it, and join the local coast care group and care for it. So we'll keep on doing it, and so thank you for your interest. And that was just one aspect of the Duan Estuary Program. If you'd like to know more about the health of the estuary and heavy metal levels and all that sort of thing, we have a report card which we put out digitally, and you're welcome to go and have a look at that. Thank you.